The right earbud. I was at work one fairly early evening as I worked at a bar and grill restaurant. Won't say the name of the restaurant. In just the neighboring city from which I live, just 10 minutes out from my house. Won't say the name of either of the two cities. Now, you all are probably wondering, well, what is it that you do at the bar and grill? Well, you see, I wasn't a bartender, nor was I the bar back or even a server. I actually worked in the back house, but not as a cook. I was in fact the dishwasher guy of the restaurant. Now I must say, in some respects, to some degree, I actually took pride in the job that I did for the business for more reasons than one. Not only was to me the job I did perhaps the easiest job a person could have, but I was prideful of the fact of knowing that nobody else there at the restaurant, as far as employee wise, wanted to do my job. Plus, there was more to my job description than just making sure the dishes got washed in a timely, fast paced manner. I also sanitized things and will often break down boxes and run miscellaneous trash to the dumpster using a wagon to put the boxes and bags of trash in, seeing as how the dumpster was all the way across the lot from the back alley. Basically, the main point with this I'm trying to get across is I was the main dish guy who was built and had energy to do his dish job and then some. I remember it was a Thursday night at the restaurant and it was already 30 minutes after the time I'd clocked in, which was 7 o'clock that evening, and it was now 7:30. I remember it was industry night that night, something new my boss started for Thursday nights in particular. I think his purpose behind it was to gain more potential customers that way, other than the ones we already have as regulars. It was probably a smart business move, though it meant the kitchen stayed open till about 1 o'clock in the morning, I think, even on a weeknight. I always managed to do my job pretty efficiently in all areas I just described earlier. But even with that, sometimes I would get caught up pretty early with things and be left with absolutely nothing left to do. So time seemed to always go by really slow when you're left twiddling your thumbs or chilling out in the back alley for moments at a time. However, one secret way it did seem to go by fairly fast was each time when I would put my wireless Bluetooth earbuds I brought with me to work most nights into my ears and listen to music nonstop. And tonight happened to be one of those nights. There was nothing really going on and I was all caught up with my work at the moment. So I dug into my pocket to pull out my wireless rechargeable case for the earbuds and took out the left earbud only. I connected the left earbud to the Bluetooth on my phone and stuffed the earbud into my left ear, of course. You see, the only reason I didn't pull both earbuds out was because I was indeed still at work, which meant I couldn't totally tune out what was going on around me. Communicating with my other coworkers was not just a must, but critically important as well. The job I did, in my eyes, was pretty laid back as it was, so I knew even as I ran the dishes through the dishwasher, I could get away with using one of the earbuds and still hear what was going on around me out the other ear. When I put the left earbud into my left ear, I listened to all kinds of genres of music, from hip hop to R&B, and even a little bit of country in the mix. I listened to everything and anything except Elvis Presley or rock and roll in general. Can't tell you why exactly, it just was what it was with me. Everything at work appeared to be going smoothly, and for what I knew it was. I started the listening process with the earbud at exactly 8 o'clock. When I looked at my phone now, it was 10:45 p.m. It was around this point, after roughly 3 hours of listening to music back to back out the earbud I was using, that the charge power had gotten very, very low on me. As a matter of fact, when I checked the percentage of the left earbud on my phone, it said that there was only 5% power charge left, which meant I obviously at that point had to place the earbud back into the rechargeable case for it to charge back up some. So that's exactly what I did, only to see though that the case itself had very little charge left also. By this point, it was 11 o'clock at night, which meant I still had about 2 hours left before the kitchen was to close. I was caught up with my work, yet bored out of my skull. You see, I still desired to listen to music to help time go by faster, but my case needed charging to be able to charge back up the left earbud, which was down at the moment. I honestly thought that this would be a long and tiresome night without some tunes to help me get through the rest of it with the rest of it. However, something suddenly dawned on me in that instant. I thought I was out of luck with listening to more music. Though it was certain that the left earbud I'd just used was very low on battery charge indeed, that I'd placed back into the case, I forgot all about the fact that I still had the right earbud left to use at my disposal. It was fully charged because I had not used it yet, not once tonight. So I quickly went to my case to grab the right earbud out of it. I connected the Bluetooth device to the Bluetooth on my phone and stuffed the earbud into my right ear this time and resumed listening to music on it. I remembered the moment I placed the right earbud into my right ear, a hip hop song played instantly from my YouTube playlist I'd created. I had over 200 songs on the playlist with R&B songs, country, but mostly hip hop. To say the artist of who I was listening to might not be as relevant as you all would want me to say, but I swear to God, not even 2 minutes in that I was listening to this hip hop song, a sudden interruption came over the earbud different from the song itself. The best way I can describe this so-called interruption of the sorts is it sounded almost like an instrumental without words, but it was very demonic in its undertone, which took me way off guard. The reason why was because the song I was listening to before the interruption took place didn't sound anything like this whatsoever, especially to the fact that I'd listened to the song about a million times and knew it like the back of my hand. And nowhere in the instrumental beat of the song was this even a factor. Dumbfounded and shocked beyond measure and belief, I listened on to the musical instrumental with the dark, demonic undertone, although my ear was not forced to at all. The instrumental went on for about a minute and 15 seconds when then a voice spoke out to me through the earbud, a demonic voice, which is to say distorted. At this point, dishes were starting to get backed up again, so I resumed my work while the distorted voice continued to speak out to me. The part that creeped me out the most about the demonic creature that began speaking to me was the fact that even with the distortion of which he spoke, I was strangely able to recognize everything that he was saying to get across to me. The demon which spoke explained to me who he was, what his name meant, and why he was there this night in my ear. He said he was a demon who went by the name Arabus and said he was one of Satan's top underling in his rule of over 200 legions of demons. This Arabus demon told me that he was a trusted demon in the underworld with about 20 legions of demons under his control. He even described to me what he looked like, saying how he was a horse-like demon with actual hoofs as feet, but when he conducted business with souls in the world of the living, he came in the form of a man and not a demonic creature. He also stated to me what his name Arabus meant, saying that it meant a never-deceiving demon who made deals with people to enhance their life, though in turn not to be deceived back, or intentionally get on his bad side. As I was listening to all this, mind you, I was still cleaning and washing dishes, but then the demon goes on to tell me this interruption in my right earbud tonight was preordained to happen through orders Satan set out for his top underling to carry out to people who can ultimately do his bidding. And it turned out I was one of the chosen ones. Arabus said the only reason things hasn't been manifesting properly and in a quicker yet timely way is that I chose to trust God all this time when it should have been his once fallen angel, Satan. He convinced me that Satan was kicked out of heaven only because God knew he'd be a much better ruler than him and had an army just as, if not more mightier than the so-called Almighty himself. Arabus said Satan put him first in line to reach out to me because he said good things were bound to happen to me if I followed his every order. Arabus, as he was never deceiving. He said my first order of things I had to do was change my music I chose to listen to rock and roll, as rock and roll was the music played throughout the underworld. He said I must start this as soon as he disconnected from my earbud and not start a day later, or otherwise he'll call the whole thing off, and it'll be as if he never spoke in my ear, marking this night. He asked me in his distorted voice if I understood everything that was explained to me, and though I didn't want to believe any of it, I reluctantly answered yes. After that, the demon uninterrupted what was going on in my ear, and it was back to the hip hop song I was listening to prior. I tried not to let this little, or maybe not so little, intervention get in the way of my job, but I gotta admit, this sudden interruption which took place in my ear just now was a game changer for me majorly. I didn't bother even telling anyone about the demon intervention in my ear, not a coworker, not anyone at home, or anyone period. I just kept the whole thing completely to myself. Once the interruption was over and the song I originally was listening to came back on, I dug into my pocket to grab my cell phone. I ended up creating a whole new playlist of nothing but rock and roll music, just as the demon Arabus basically commanded me to, in order to have major turnarounds in my life, just as he promised. For the rest of that shift that night, it went by kind of awkwardly in a way, but nevertheless, it did eventually pass. And once it did, I then found myself arriving home at around 2:30 in the morning. It was a late night, both at work and to the fact that it was roughly 3 in the morning now. When I got home, I had yet another conversation with the same demon I had spoken with tonight at work, and as a matter of fact, it occurred in the right earbud of both my earbuds. Arabus spoke out to me again, setting in motion some of the orders he wanted me to do to bring about dramatic changes in my life. He said he wanted to focus on my family life as far as with my parents, including with my workaholic, single parent, 3 kid having with 3 different men mother, and my deadbeat father, who's been deadbeat in my life personally for 20 plus years, and then with work life. The demon said for a great majority of my life, I've gone angry and unattended to on an emotional level with the welfare of my emotional well being by both my parents, and yes, even my mother, who's been there practically my whole life. He wasn't wrong, because actually all I ever remember, even from when I was a kid, was my mother away from home a lot, working all the time, to where it was as if she hardly had time to her kids and what was going on with them. So that being said, he advised me that together we were going to work on her first. You see, my mom truly worked a lot, and though it's true that parents should provide for their children financially, still children go through growing pains as they get older because of things they may have gone through as a learning experience, hurtful, almost crippling things that can affect their emotional well-being, which parents can often be unaware of because of whatever excuse they want to come up with when it comes to their own children, and then have the nerve to wonder why they have all these underlying problems. For me, I was induced to anger and depression at I would say a very early age, from when I went through bullying in middle school to behavioral changes because I never told anybody what was going on with me. My mother handing me over the phone when my father called for the first time to break promises to me he never kept when I was a mere young kid and never knew who he was until that phone call. The thing about it was, I didn't even have to explain all this to Arabus because he knew already about hurtful events of my past. His plan about my mom to get her even now to pay more attention to me than she may or may not have ever had before was to call her job for 3 days straight in the morning times and mimic my mom's voice to her supervisor to say that she was sick and couldn't come in, or better yet, cuss out her boss for giving her too much overtime hours in 1 week. Since I knew how to play like I was my own mom really well, he said, from the sound of her voice to the way she acted. He said that if I did this just as he wanted me to, either one or two things would happen as a result. He said my mom would either instantly get fired or her hours would be cut dramatically where she wouldn't be at work most of the time, most days. And that would force her to not only care about her finances, but the well-being of me as her son for a change. Honestly, my initial reaction was, hell no, man. But I thought more about how all through the years I wished my mother could have paid more attention to my emotional welfare. Because if I personally felt like she had, I wouldn't feel as unloved by my mom as I sometimes even do today. Even though my mom has always been there, just not in every way that I would have preferred if I could truly have my Druthers. I complied to what Arbus commanded for me to do to better get my mom's attention about the attention I'm desperately seeking from her, if she wasn't so used to working so much. When I called up to her job pretending to be her for 3 mornings straight, the latter of the two possible outcomes Arbus told me might happen had happened, where she only got her hours cut some because they really thought my voice sounded like hers. I expressed how I demanded to not have all this time at work because I bust her butt and has been doing that for the company for 10 plus years and hardly having any time spent with her kids. I went off and my actual mom was confounded when she found out about her reduced schedule, yet she still made that sucker work. I did, however, get the desired result that Araba said would happen, that my mom would be more attentive to my behaviors and feelings about my day-to-day experiences, which is something I've been longing for from her for a long time. But because she was always working a lot, even ever since she's been in the Navy for 20 years, maybe more so then than now, I hadn't always gotten that proper attention from her as I would have liked. But over the next week period, since the intervention with the demon about my mom, I personally have felt that my mom and I's relationship has become way less toxic than it has been for the past 16 years, since I was 11 years old. Now she's more emotionally involved with me, as all mothers should be with their children, no matter how hard they do work. But because she's been working way less since after the demon Arabus stepped in, I felt better actually opening up to my mother about past issues that has gone unresolved for years upon years at a time. The next time I spoke with Arabus, I thanked him for that, and he simply said, "Don't mention it," and said how we needed to move on to my father now to make him change. Arabus said in order for my father to change his non-communicating and non-being there ways, we had to reach out secretly to his mother, my grandmother, and vent to her all the ways my dad has made me feel over the years of never being there and making me that pathetic promise to me that he broke when I was 11. He said, though I met my dad for the first time when I was 25 and I actually had his cell phone number, don't call it again because the results will always be the same of him not caring to answer when I call. He said instead to call up his mom and reveal to her everything about who I am, what her son, my dad, has done to me, and how he continues to make me feel behind it all to this day, and how I feel about him as the man that's supposed to be my father. Araba said to find her number off the internet through Google, and once she answers, hold nothing back, even if it makes me emotional to the point where I get angry or cry. So I followed those exact words of the demon. When the lady answers my call once I discovered her number as her name had been told to me by Arabus, I noticed she was very receptive to everything I told her. I explained to my dad's mom how I was her grandson, and her son has never once made an effort to be involved in my life in any way, besides the fact he nutted me out into this life, this world, and the phone call with the attached promise I got from him way back when I was 11, which he never has managed to keep for whatever reason throughout the next 16 years to come up to now. I told my grandmother how bitter and angry I've mainly felt over the past years, even more so than really depressed, because of him. Not really anyone else I've ever come across who's wronged me, because it's a difference with him to the fact that he is who he is about my life, my deadbeat dad. I told her how my father has berated me over the phone, blamed me for the situation of me feeling the way that I do because of his utter absence of my life, and he's played mind games with me and cussed me out for no reason at all because I would call him excessively just to try to get through to him. I also told her blatantly and boldly how I felt about her no good son because of all this, that he's a no good, unfit father that doesn't even deserve to be able to produce children he won't take care of. I told her her son is an abominable Satan spawn who chose alcohol and other drugs his whole life over his own kids, who two of them has grown to hate him badly, me being one of them. My dad's mom was stunned, better yet, she was appalled by my venting of everything I had to say about her sorry, deadbeat, son of a mother effer son. She was shocked for a few reasons. One, because she never knew her son even had a son, and she didn't raise him to be this way towards children of his own. She knew already about his daughters he had by two different mothers, but never once did he bother to tell her about the son he had. In fact, I was his only son of the three kids he had, and she had zero clue. Another thing that I think took her aback completely was my vehement, passionate, yet very clear expression of my words and my anger to her about my father, who once again has not made any effort whatsoever to be in my life in any way. As choked up as I was just explaining it to her, my dad's mom actually came to tears as I could hear her struggling to get the next word out, as she was emotionally hysterical. Then she says to me, "Hold on a minute, grandson," as she then hung up our conversation. I kid you guys not, whatever my grandmother did after she decided to end our phone conversation was something truly powerful and almost magical. Because I swear, not even another day later, hell, not even 10 minutes later, that was yet to pass on by, I looked down at my phone only to see that I was getting an incoming call from my dad himself. The caller ID said, "Dad," and almost immediately when I saw this, I answered the call. Right away, when my dad calls me, he starts going on about how truly sorry he was for all the time he missed and for the pain he has put me through by not ever being there, and for admitting the promise he made to me way back when I was 11 that he wanted to pretend he forgot the time I brought it to his attention was a pretty low down dirty thing to do. My father also confessed that before now, right before he decided to call me, he was drinking with a buddy of his who he's known ever since his younger years, and something told him to stop everything he was doing. Even as it stands, he works 14-hour shifts most days out of the week and typically only has Sundays off, to call his son without making another excuse as to why he couldn't or chose otherwise not to. My guess would be it probably was his conscience toying with him, but either way, I sure was glad to see and hear from him more often than what I used to get, seeing as how my dad and I video chatted more than we talked on the regular phone. He must have apologized to me over the phone that day over like a million times, saying to me how he was sorry. And genuinely, I felt in my heart that he was really sincere this time, as the number estimation is not an exaggeration to you all in the slightest. My father and I were now on solid good terms ever since the calling his mother out of the blue incident had taken place as Arabus ordered me to do. I was grateful to finally have my dad as part of my life now, but I also thanked Arabus for rekindling our broken relationship too the next time I spoke with him. My family life problems felt like they were now resolved. However, one Wednesday night, as I was at work washing dishes, I had my left earbud in my ear as I was working, listening to rock and roll still instead of other genres of music. All of a sudden, as I was at the dish pit where the sink and dish washing machine was, a guy that was my coworker roughly told me from behind to move out of his way. And when I looked over my right shoulder, he was bringing back the grease trap pan from the grill and decided he wanted to dump it out in the very sink I was using at the moment, when he could have simply dumped it outside or in one of the other sinks. He gruffly pushes me a little to the side by shoving me with the edge of the pan to move me out of his way. And then, as he's dumping the grease, Most of it ended up spilling all over the floor near where my feet was. He damn near pretty much missed the sink altogether, but had the gall to be rude to another human being in the way that he did. Better yet, to another grown man. I can't even begin to express to you all just how angry and pissed off I was at this dude for his utter and blatant disrespect of me on the job at my job. I did, however, express it to the demon Arabus when I spoke with him yet again that same night while I was at work still. I listened to the rock and roll music for about a couple of hours in the left earbud before it went dead, then switched to the right earbud to talk to Arabus on how best to deal with this racking of the nerves, or in other words, nerve racking ordeal. Because you see, to be completely honest with you all, I had been dealing with this dickwad, yet at the same time dickless muscle-bound wannabe bully prick for about a couple of weeks now, seeing as how he was the irritating newbie in the kitchen. The reason I say muscle-bound as a means of describing this nut job dude is because the only thing that made him the bigger guy physically between us two was the fact that his muscles were bigger than my own, but stature-wise he was only a few inches shorter than I was. I also refer to him as a wannabe bully for at least three reasons. For one, for an oversized grown man, this dude had a serious attitude problem, and his work ethics, for what I saw, were very poor due to the attitude of which he had. Secondly, he was notorious for mean mugging the hell out of his other coworkers for no apparent reason at all, and regarding favoritism to those he chose to give daps to, as far as with the dudes, both either another employee or a regular of the restaurant, which I was not one, but didn't care to be. And lastly, I strongly believed because of his physical size, even for a fairly short guy, muscles and all, he felt some smugly sense of power and control and borderline intimidation to others. Only thing was, as a man myself, I didn't find this guy intimidating in the slightest. I was so beyond pissed and heated as I spoke with Arabus, but he eventually convinced me to calm down, as he had cooked up a plan for me to follow through with to get rid of this punk dude. He said though the stuff he pulled tonight was indeed frustrating and irritating to the core, don't tell the kitchen supervisor or manager or even the main boss of the restaurant anything about what he did. With the right earbud still in my right ear, I went out by the bar from the back house and saw the prick sitting at a far off table near the bar, but he was sitting by himself after he had already clocked out and had earphones in his ears, I guess waiting for his ride or whatever. I went up directly to him, and once I approached where he was sitting, he almost instantly glances over at me from looking at his phone and gives me a really mean stare. Then he stood up and faced me. Once we were both standing there face to face, I exerted a force with my fist to his face, square on, in front of everyone that was surrounding us at that. People were minding their business initially, but the impact from the punch to the guy's face was so loud, it got attention from the remainder of everyone that was still at the bar and grill at that moment towards closing time. When I boldly and unnervously punched this dude in the face, blood spattered from his nose onto my face as I stood across from him, still posted up, thinking honestly he would probably hit me back. He fell down pretty hard and was out for about 45 seconds before he slowly stood back up, looked at me, holding his nose bone, and then just walks out the restaurant like nothing happened. The next day, he ended up quitting as a result. You see, I personally would have never thought to carry out such active duty to get rid of an annoying 41-year-old prick, but Arabus was the one that told me to do it that way. He knew the guy was bound to not want any more problems after I did that, so he felt that was the best way of getting rid of him other than being a coward and going behind his back to report him to the boss or any other head manager. For the next few days to follow, since that incident, everything about the current state of my life was truly and amazingly good. My mom and I had a good relationship now. My father and I's relationship was beyond anything I could have ever asked for, and work was a pleasurable thing to go to now since the big bully had quit. I honestly could say that I had no complaints, and my life seemed to be in mint condition all around now in all areas that were once troublesome. I thanked Araba so much for these dramatic changes to the point to where it was like I was almost praising him because he had made more of an impact in my life, it seemed, than even any time that I ever tried to talk to God about my problems. Nevertheless, as true as all this may stand, I was noticing a pattern of the changes from orders off of the never deceiving demon. I must admit, Arbus has never once steered me wrong nor deceived me, as his name signifies, but it was also at the cost of deceiving others just to get what I wanted. For instance, with my mom. He didn't deceive me when he told me to call up her job and pretend to be her to get her fewer hours since I was always so problematic with her working constantly all the time. Yet it was deceitful to my mom to go behind her back to carry that out without her knowing. Yet my mother is still able to pay her bills all the same, even with the fewer hours she now has. Same with my dad. The demon didn't deceive me about what would happen as a result of doing what he told me to do to get him to become conscious for a change to wanting to talk to me more. Yet it took going behind my dad's back to talk to his mom about everything he put me through just to get his attention, which is in my mind pretty deceitful. Then, with the wannabe bully dude at my job, I never intend to cost anyone their job for any reason whatsoever, even if they are being a prick towards me personally. It's just the kind of heart I have. But things could have always worked out differently had even I told the boss what had happened. He could have made certain arrangements for the dude to not have him work on the same shifts as me or something, because anything is better than getting fired or causing a person to want to quit their job, even as a revenge type thing to get back at the person on your job when they deliberately do something to aggravate your nerves. When Arabas told me to flat out punch the dude in the face in front of surrounding people, I knew right off the bat that that was a deceitful act too, towards the guy, even though I in the end benefited from it. Because now that I think about it, no one wants to come to work to be disrespected anyway. So like I said, I couldn't complain. However, the true test of what the demon would want me to carry out was yet to come. Because one Thursday night as I was at work, I was rock and rolling to the rock and roll music from my YouTube playlist in my left ear. Again, once the left earbud went dead, I went straight to the right earbud because I was greatly anticipating hearing from Arabus because I knew he would already have something to tell me for me to carry out. Because as I remembered from the first day I ever spoke with him, we were technically both just following orders, him from Satan and me from him. And besides, none of his orders were really too drastic for me to rebel against and not carry out. Well, except for tonight when I talked to him. Arabus then ordered me tonight that when I got home from work to end everything and kill myself by overdosing on some prescription medication I took. He explained to me that when I would pass on due to the overdose tonight, that Satan had promised a co-ruling where I would have free reign in his everlasting domain, something not guaranteed for in God's kingdom of heaven. He said my soul would be forever set free in hell, and I would have the leisure to do whatever I wanted to do while down there. For some reason, probably for a reasonable reason too at that, I didn't believe him instantly when he was spewing this crap at me. As much courage as it took, I mustered up enough of it to tell this demon that I just couldn't follow through with that order by committing suicide and risking missing heaven behind it. I could tell Arabus wasn't having it at all because he began to get very angry with me, reminding me about everything he'd done for me up to this point and saying how ungrateful I was and demonizing me, torturing me with his evil words, almost threatening me. I found myself I found myself arguing with Arbus back to back, but the main thing I told him was he was very full of it and I had had enough. I told him he can suffocate in hell and go screw himself before yanking out my earbuds, running out into the back alley and throwing the earbuds out into the huge lake back there. I drowned the earbuds to escape the demon's torture and threats he was now making on my life, and I didn't feel bad about it one bit. For the time being, days and weeks later to follow, I tried everything in my power to undo what Arbus made me do, because I realized I didn't need changes that bad, not if it meant deceiving others to the degree of humiliation. I started with fixing my mother's hours again by calling up her job and confessing how it was really me that was mocking her voice. And just like that, they gave my mother her full-time hours back and told me next time to consider the serious consequences of doing things so cruel. I told them firmly how there wouldn't be a next time to screw up in such a manner. Not anymore. I told them basically that it would never happen again. I skipped the situation with my dad and went and called up the dude who I physically violated. I retrieved his number as it was still in the work system from the Sling app and called him up. I apologized for punching him that night. He laughs, says I throw a heck of a right hand, and actually forgives me. We became really good friends from that point on, believe it or not. Most of what was done, I corrected, and to the fact that it took less than a whole month to realize this demon was basically full of crap, and all he wanted, ultimately, like I'm sure any demon you communicate with, was to win my soul over, which he never got the chance to achieve. And I've never been happier now for the way things were. Days went by, then days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and then months into a whole year later since the demon intervention of my life. I was sitting up one night in the den as I was just writing this story peacefully and quietly to myself to share with you all when all of a sudden, as I was almost done penciling the story, a knock occurred at the den door and then someone cracks it open. It's my younger brother holding a phone in his hand. Someone just called the house phone. He says his name is Arbus and he needs to talk to you. He says, right now, my brother says. At this point, my ears perked up as well as my eyes widened. And I told my brother to hang the phone up immediately and disconnect it from out the wall socket. He does this, yet 10 minutes later, I get a call from my own cell phone in the late midnight hour of the night. When I looked at the screen, the caller ID said Arbus and had the angriest looking devil emoji right below it. I purposely swiped decline, but my phone rang again and again. No matter how much I was declining, it wouldn't stop. So I smashed my own nearly $200 phone that I paid for to smithereens. I hate that I ever got on this demon's bad side, because now he will haunt me until I answer him, and I don't think I ever will. That's it, guys.